You've been told that silence is absence, that it is emptiness, void, nothingness. But Jung warned, silence is never empty. Silence is data. Every pause, every hesitation, every withheld word is a transmission from the unconscious. You think nothing is happening, but the psyche is whispering in a language most people never learn to read. Jung once wrote that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Silence is where that direction leaks through. The sigh before a confession, the tight smile before agreement, the sudden quiet in a room full of noise. These are not gaps, they are codes. They see nothing in silence. You sense the weight in silence. You feel the fracture that silence conceals. Why? Because the unconscious does not scream, it murmurs. It leaves behind fragments, absences, subtle voids that carry more truth than words ever could. Jung observed in his patients that what they didn't say often betrayed more than what they said aloud. Consider his case of the silent family, a household where there were no fights, no open conflicts, only smiles and polite conversation. On the surface, harmony. But Jung diagnosed it as emotional starvation. He noticed that silence here wasn't peace, it was suffocation. The absence of conflict was itself a symptom, proof that love had been replaced by performance. Because silence doesn't erase the truth, it conceals it. And what is concealed grows teeth in the dark. What is unspoken mutates, pressurizes, until it erupts in symptoms, anxiety, exhaustion, dreams that scream in symbols. This is why Jung called silence the unconscious speaking in negative space. It is like the dark matter of psychology. You cannot see it directly, but it bends everything around it. So if silence isn't emptiness, but data, the question becomes, do you know how to read it? Silence is not random. It has architecture. It forms in patterns as predictable as storm fronts. Jung observed that where there is silence, there is structure, and the structure always tells you where the psyche is hiding. In families, silence is often the first institution. The child learns what cannot be spoken. Father's rage, mother's despair, the family secret that no guest must ever know. The living room is orderly, the dinner table polite, but beneath it runs what Jung called the shadow basement, a psychic cellar where the repressed is stored. Think of it this way. Every family builds two houses, the visible house, furnished with smiles, rituals, polite words, and the invisible house, echoing with unspoken resentments, forbidden griefs, unadmitted betrayals. Silence is the staircase between the two. Because when the shadow is denied, it does not disappear. It migrates downward. It presses through pauses, awkward shifts, half-finished sentences. It lives in the things we don't talk about. And in not talking, the silence becomes a shrine, an altar of avoidance where the unconscious is worshipped in secret. Jung discovered that silence operates like negative space in art. The unpainted areas define the image more than the strokes themselves. What isn't said reveals the deeper truth of what is. A patient might speak glowingly of a spouse, but never mention their name, might talk endlessly about work, but never about home. The omissions are signals, the absences are coordinates. You see it in family systems, the lost sibling never spoken of, the grandfather's violence reduced to a bad temper, the depression masked with cheerful phrases. Silence here is containment, but containment is not resolution. It is merely a lid pressed against boiling water. Jung warned that these basements eventually flood. The repressed shadow surges upward, often in the next generation. Children inherit not just their parents' features, but their silences. They act out the conflicts that were never spoken. They carry the weight of ghosts they never met. This is why Jung said, the greatest burden on a child is the unlived life of the parent. Silence, then, is not neutral. It is transgenerational architecture. It builds walls where truth should flow. It locks rooms that the psyche will eventually be forced to open through neurosis, dreams, or sudden breakdowns. The lesson? If you want to understand a person or a family, don't listen only to what they say. Map the silences. Where do they fall quiet? Where do the words break off? Where is laughter used as plaster over a crack? That is the shadow basement speaking. And once you recognize that silence is structure, you can begin to dismantle it, brick by unspoken brick. Not all silences are alike. Jung taught that the unconscious wears many masks, and silence is one of its most deceptive. To the untrained ear, every pause sounds the same. But to the analyst, silence breaks into categories, each revealing a distinct psychic mechanism. I call them the four silences: regulated, avoidant, manipulative, ambivalent. 1. Regulated silence, the silence of integration. This is the healthiest form. After deep intimacy, some fall quiet, not to avoid you, but to absorb you. Jung saw this in patients who, after breakthroughs, needed time to let their psyche reorder itself. Like soil after rain, it must settle. If someone withdraws calmly, then returns with steadiness, you are witnessing regulated silence. This is not rejection, it is digestion. 2. Avoidant silence, the silence of escape. Here, silence is distance disguised as composure. Jung called this the defensive function of the psyche, where withdrawal serves to shield the self from engulfment. The avoidant cannot tolerate too much closeness without feeling the loss of their autonomy. So, they vanish into quiet. They are not integrating. You are evaporating from their field of presence. 3. Manipulative silence, the silence of power. This is the most dangerous. Jung described projection with absolute conviction as one of the most destructive forces in human relationship. Manipulative silence operates on the same principle. It bends reality by withholding presence. It is the psychological equivalent of a leash. They do not speak, not because they have nothing to say, but because they want you to suffer the void. It trains you to chase, to fill the space with apologies and explanations. Silence becomes a weaponized vacuum. 4. Ambivalent silence, the silence of inner chaos. This one is tragic. It is not strategic, but it still wounds. Ambivalence breeds silence that is inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes cold. Jung wrote of the empath who absorbs too much and then breaks down into unnatural calm. This is similar. Silence born of confusion, the psyche torn between desire and fear. They retreat, then return, then retreat again. It is not manipulation but instability. Yet its effect on the other is the same: uncertainty, exhaustion, erosion of trust. These four silences form a taxonomy, a map you must learn to read if you wish to preserve your mind. Because not knowing the difference is fatal, you mistake regulated silence for abandonment, and you flee. You mistake manipulative silence for integration, and you stay too long. The key is not to ask, why are they silent? The key is to watch what silence produces. Does it restore them, or does it drain you? Does it return with clarity, or with control? Because silence is not absence. It is always action, and once you learn to decode it, you will never be fooled by it again. Jung insisted that silence is never random. It obeys a mechanism, a chain of cause and effect. If you listen carefully, every pause contains a because, therefore sequence. The psyche cannot help but reveal its logic. Because closeness awakens memory, therefore silence emerges as defense. Jung observed that intimacy stirs not only love, but buried terror. A partner's warmth may unconsciously recall the engulfing parent, the unpredictable caregiver, the betrayal once endured. The body remembers even when the mind forgets. And so silence appears, not as rejection of you, but as protection from what closeness evokes. Because attention is nourishment. Therefore, withholding becomes currency. Manipulative silence functions on this principle. Jung noted that projection, when fused with conviction, creates reality distortion fields. In the same way, silence manipulates perception. It makes your need visible, your patience tested, your worthiness questioned. They don't need to attack. Absence itself becomes an attack. Because the psyche seeks equilibrium, therefore ambivalence becomes choreography. The ambivalent person does not choose consciously. They are pulled in two directions, longing for connection, terrified of it. Silence is their unconscious dance step. They advance, then retreat, then advance again. Jung described this dynamic as the tension of opposites, a psychic war that produces confusion not only in the sufferer, but in everyone orbiting them. Because the unconscious demands expression, therefore silence eventually erupts in speech or symptom. The quiet is never permanent. It accumulates pressure. Jung compared the repressed psyche to a sealed container. The longer it holds, the more violent the eventual release. This is why families with no conflict often birth sudden explosions, affairs, breakdowns. Silence did not prevent conflict. It fermented it. So when you encounter silence, you are not facing absence. You are facing inevitability. If it is regulated, therefore it will return with steadiness. If it is avoidant, therefore it will grow into distance. If it is manipulative, therefore it will enslave. If it is ambivalent, therefore it will entangle. Silence is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a script that, if left unread, will write itself into your life. Jung's point was mercilessly clear. Make the unconscious conscious, or it will act itself out as fate. Jung warned that the first 48 hours after intimacy, conflict, or revelation are decisive. This is the window when silence crystallizes into either integration or pathology. What you do in those 2 days determines whether you preserve your sanity or forfeit it. Why 48 hours? Because the psyche needs time to metabolize experience. In Jung's Zurich clinic, he noticed that patients often withdrew after breakthroughs. They were not rejecting him. They were consolidating. If he pursued too quickly, pressing for words, demanding clarity, their defenses hardened. If he waited, they returned with insight. Thus the principle: allow silence its first natural cycle. But there is a razor's edge here, because if silence extends beyond this threshold, it changes form. At 49 hours, integration can decay into avoidance. What was once digestion begins to taste of distance. Beyond that, silence risks becoming a weapon. So what must you do? Containment without chasing. Hold yourself steady without collapsing into pursuit. This is the discipline Jung called psychological economy, the wise stewardship of your energy. Here is the checklist for those crucial 2 days. Do not double text. Every extra message turns silence into leverage against you. Do not invent explanations. As Jung wrote, projection is the most dangerous psychic operation, and your own projections will rush to fill the void. Resist. Do not self-abandon. Maintain your rhythms, sleep, food, work, ritual. Do not make another's silence the center of your orbit. Instead, practice what Jung called active waiting. You neither flee nor chase. You let the psyche show its hand, because silence always does. If the quiet was regulated, it will return with stability. If it was avoidant, it will elongate into absence. If manipulative, it will bait you into breaking your stance. If ambivalent, it will wobble, drawing close, then fleeing again. The 48-hour rule is not superstition. It is psychic hygiene. You give the unconscious space to reveal its true pattern without distorting it by your own panic. And when the window closes, then you act. Jung insisted, do not allow the unconscious to become the tyrant of your fate, which is why the next step is decisive, the litmus text. After 48 hours, silence demands interpretation. Jung taught that projection fills a void when truth is withheld. If you don't anchor yourself, your own mind will invent stories, each one darker than the last. That is why you need a test, a single act that reveals the quality of the silence without degrading you into pursuit. I call it the litmus text. It is one message, short, clear, dignified. You do not beg, you do not explain, you do not accuse. You place the weight of truth back on the other, and then you wait. The script is simple. Hey, I enjoyed our time. I value steady communication. If now's not a good season, that's okay. I wish you well. Why this works? It acknowledges connection without clinging. It names your value, steadiness, without demanding conformity. It offers an exit, which manipulative personalities despise because it removes their leverage. Now comes the crucial part, reading the response. Jung reminded us that the psyche cannot hide forever. Every reply is a confession. If the silence was regulated, they return with warmth and clarity. They explain their pause without defensiveness. The text activates repair. If avoidant, they respond thinly, vaguely, or not at all. The absence confirms the pattern, distance disguised as calm. If manipulative, they react with irritation, guilt-tripping, or sudden love-bombing. They resent the boundary because it interrupts their control. If ambivalent, they wobble. A warm reply, then silence again. A cycle that repeats until you step out of the loop. The litmus text is not about winning them back. It is about winning yourself back. Because, as Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Your message turns the hidden into the revealed. And once revealed, you must act. That is where most falter, seeing the truth, but refusing to honor it. Which is why we move next into the response protocols. 4 paths, depending on which silence you have unmasked. Now the veil has lifted. The litmus text has revealed the nature of their silence. Jung warned that once truth emerges, to deny it is to collude with your own destruction. This is the moment where you stop asking, "Why are they silent?" and start asking, "What must I do?" Here are the 4 response protocols, each tailored to the silence you have uncovered. 1. Regulated silence. Mirror their rhythm. If they return with steadiness, you do not punish them for the pause. Jung saw that integration requires space. The psyche digests at its own pace. You honor this by matching their rhythm, engaged, but not intrusive. The protocol is simple. Receive, affirm, schedule the next contact. This cultivates trust. Their silence is not against you, it is for them. 2. Avoidant silence. Time box the contact. When avoidant silence appears, boundaries are your lifeline. Jung insisted that individuation means claiming your own space without apology. So you offer short, specific bids. I'd like to see you Tuesday at 6. If that doesn't work, no worries. If they withdraw further, you do not chase. If they engage, you measure consistency over words. Avoidant types need freedom, but freedom without responsibility is abandonment. You will know the difference by their follow-through. 3. Manipulative silence. 1 boundary, then distance. This is the most perilous. Manipulative silence thrives on your explanations, your long clarifications, your desperate attempts to be understood. Jung described this as reality distortion, where your defenses become their evidence. The protocol: 1 clear boundary, then withdrawal. Example: I don't respond well to long gaps without communication. If that's your style, we're not aligned. Say it once, then step back. If they escalate, guilt trip, or bait you, you do not explain further. Your absence is your answer. 4. Ambivalent silence. Name the wobble. Ambivalence is tragic, but clarity is still possible. Jung saw this pattern in empaths who oscillated between absorption and rejection. The protocol: reflect the inconsistency without accusation. I notice we get close and then things go quiet. That back and forth doesn't work for me. Can we find steadier ground? Their response will reveal everything. If they can name their fear and commit to change, there is hope. If they collapse into confusion or cycles, you must decide if your sanity can withstand their storm. The principle across all 4: respond once, cleanly, without self-abandonment. Jung's law applies. What you resist not only persists, but grows in size. If you resist reality, you will inflate the silence into destiny. If you accept it, you are free. And yet, Here lies the hidden danger. Silence doesn't only expose them, it exposes you, because the type of silence that hooks you is the mirror of your own shadow. Which brings us to the next layer, your shadow in their silence. Now we turn the mirror inward. Jung warned that the danger of projection is not only that others project onto us, it is that we are drawn to the projections that resonate with our own shadow. The silence you cannot bear is often the silence that touches the wound you refuse to face. Why do you stay when someone withholds? Why do you ache to decode their pauses as if they conceal treasure? The truth is harsher. It is not their silence you fear, it is your own. Some chase avoidant silence because their shadow whispers, "I am unworthy unless pursued." Others collapse before manipulative silence because their shadow pleads, "If I explain myself enough, I will finally be safe." Many tolerate ambivalent silence because their shadow bargains. Chaos is better than being abandoned. Jung called this participation mystique, the unconscious fusion of your wound with another's behavior. You don't just interact with their silence, you merge with it, carrying both your pain and theirs until you no longer know the difference. But here is the paradox. The silence that devastates you is also the silence that reveals you. It unmasks the part of you that has not yet individuated. The rescuer pride, the fear of ordinariness, the hunger for approval, all lie exposed when the other refuses to answer. And so the task is not merely to diagnose their pattern, but to confront your complicity. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The darkness here is the way you abandon yourself in the face of another's absence. A practice, when silence strikes, perform what I call the 3x3 grounding. 3 breaths anchor the body. 3 sensations, name what you feel physically. 3 facts, state aloud what you know to be real, not imagined. This breaks the trance of projection. It severs the fusion. It reminds you that their silence is their psyche, not your worth. Remember, silence hooks you because it echoes a chamber already inside. Until you face that inner void, you will keep finding people who recreate it for you, which is why the next step is so practical, learning exactly what to send and what never to send when silence tries to pull you into its orbit. By now you know, silence is data, but data without discipline turns toxic. Jung observed that the psyche cannot withstand ambiguity for long. It rushes to fill the void with fantasy, fear, or rage. This is where most people destroy themselves, in the messages they send under pressure. So let us be precise. The playbook divides into dos and don'ts, a discipline Jung would have called psychological economy. Dos, messages that preserve dignity and reveal truth. Be concise. A single sentence carries more weight than a paragraph of pleading. Be time-bound, offer clear anchors. I'm available Tuesday. This prevents drift. Be kind but clear. Respect the bond without surrendering self. I enjoy our connection and need steadiness. Be mirror-like. Match the level of investment they show, neither inflating nor deflating it. Don'ts, messages that entangle you in their silence. Don't double text. Each unsent reply is your strength. Each extra message is their control. Don't explain your worth. Jung warned that what is unconscious in the other cannot be corrected by your consciousness. Explanation only deepens projection. Don't perform sarcasm or tests. Silence plus mockery becomes poison. It feeds the shadow cycle. Don't negotiate at midnight. Nothing resolved in desperation lasts in daylight. 2 scripts to keep in reserve, rescue lines when silence threatens to drown you. It looks like our pace is different. I'm going to step back. Reach out if that changes. I like this and I need steadier contact. If that's not you right now, that's okay. Both are clean, unchained from outcome, and anchored in self-respect. They do not plead, they do not punish. They place responsibility back where it belongs. Remember, the words you send are not just communication, they are psychic architecture. Each message builds or erodes your sovereignty. Jung insisted that individuation means learning to stand as a whole person, not as half of someone else's silence. And yet, words alone are not enough, because silence does not only agitate the mind, it unravels the nervous system. That is why the next step is not verbal, but somatic, learning how to reset the body when silence hijacks your equilibrium. Jung reminded us that the psyche is not just mind, it is body, instinct, sensation. When silence grips you, it is not only your thoughts that race. Your chest tightens, your stomach knots, your pulse surges. The body speaks the language of abandonment, and unless you reset it, no amount of reasoning will free you. He warned that the greatest danger is not the external event, but the internal collapse. What you resist not only persists, but grows. Resisting your body's fear magnifies it. The answer is not suppression, but regulation. Here is a 5-minute ritual, practical alchemy for the nervous system. Step 1. Breath as anchor, 1 minute. Box breathing, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Repeat. Jung saw breath as the bridge between conscious and unconscious, a way to harness instinct without repression. Step 2. Cold reset, 30 seconds. Splash cold water on your face or place something cool on the back of your neck. This shocks the vagus nerve, pulling you from fight or flight into parasympathetic calm. Step 3. The purge page, 2 minutes. Take paper. Draw 2 columns, facts, verses, stories. Under facts, write only verifiable truths. No message in 48 hours. Under stories, write the interpretations. They don't care. I am unworthy. See how the second column reveals not reality but projection. This exercise interrupts what Jung called inflation, the psyche swelling with fantasy. Step 4. The 3 secure actions, 90 seconds. Name 3 small embodied actions you control today. A walk outside, a meal you will cook, a call you will make. Then do them. Action is antidote to paralysis. Jung called this symbolic living, anchoring psyche in small deliberate acts. In less than 5 minutes, the body recalibrates. You move from prisoner of silence to witness of silence, from fusion with the void to sovereignty over it. And once your nervous system is steady, you can see more clearly. Silence is not only danger. Sometimes silence is care, which is why we now turn to the green flags, the signs of silence that heal rather than harm. Jung cautioned us never to mistake pathology for health, nor health for pathology. Just as silence can be weapon, it can also be medicine. The mature psyche knows when to speak and when to withdraw, when to let words build bridges, and when to let quiet restore balance. So what are the green flags of silence, the patterns that reveal care rather than control? 1. Predictable return. The first green flag, they go quiet but come back consistently, not after weeks of absence, not after you beg, but as part of a steady rhythm. Jung described individuation as finding one's own pace within relationship. A regulated partner may need space, but their return is reliable. Silence is followed by presence. 2. Specific planning. When they re-enter, they don't vanish into vague words. They offer a clear anchor. I'd like to see you Friday, or let's call tomorrow. This is silence that integrates, not silence that destabilizes. Their actions align with their words, a hallmark of psychological health. 3. Repair after delay. Even healthy individuals misstep. The difference is in repair. A partner with integrity can say, I needed space. I should have told you sooner. This kind of acknowledgement dissolves tension rather than compounding it. Jung taught that wholeness comes not from perfection, but from conscious correction. 4. Congruence. The body doesn't lie. Green flag silence ends with congruent presence, eye contact, warmth, attunement. If their energy is steady, if their words and tone match, the silence was digestion, not dismissal. Case example. One of Jung's patients entered a new relationship after years with an avoidant partner. At first, she panicked when her new partner went quiet for a day, but he returned with consistency. "Yesterday I needed time to decompress from work. I should have let you know. Thanks for understanding." Over time, she saw that his silence was not abandonment, but self-regulation. Her nervous system, once trained to equate quiet with loss, learned a new lesson. Silence can coexist with safety. These are the silences worth keeping. They do not erode trust. They build it. They do not demand you abandon yourself. They invite you to rest in yourself. But when silence is not green, when it corrodes instead of nourishes, you must act. Not with war, but with withdrawal, the quiet exit. Jung warned that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. What he meant was this: when we refuse the clean pain of letting go, we end up trapped in the endless torment of staying. The quiet exit is the antidote. It is how you detach without drama, how you walk away without burning yourself in the fire of revenge. The protocol is threefold. Step 1. State the boundary. One sentence, calm and final. I need steadier contact than this dynamic allows. Not a speech, not a dossier of evidence. Jung taught that the unconscious resists lectures, but responds to clarity. State it once. Step 2. Give the choice. Offer the path forward. If this pace works for you, I wish you well. If you'd like to move differently, I'm open. This grants freedom, and freedom is where manipulative patterns often collapse. For the avoidant or ambivalent, it brings their contradiction to the surface. For the manipulator, it severs control. Step 3. Act on it once. The most difficult moment: do not repeat, do not renegotiate. You leave when the pattern persists. Jung insisted that individuation requires decisiveness, the courage to live aligned with inner truth rather than outer approval. And then there is the temptation, the rehook, the breadcrumb, the apology that is not change, the sudden surge of affection after weeks of absence. Here you must remember, the psyche does not transform through temporary gestures. Look for pattern, not promise. Even your social environment must reflect the exit. Ask, will you unfollow or block? Each has meaning. Unfollow is silence. Block is closure. Choose what aligns with your nervous system's need for rest. Neither is cruelty. Both are hygiene. The quiet exit is not coldness. It is clarity. You do not scorch the earth. You simply stop watering the desert. But beware, the greatest danger is not in the exit itself. It is in the pitfalls that tempt you back into silence's prison. Exiting silence is not enough. The psyche has its traps, and Jung cautioned that the shadow never disappears, it changes masks. Here are the 3 most common pitfalls that pull people back into destructive cycles, and how to resist them. Pitfall 1, meaning making mania. The mind, unable to tolerate ambiguity, spins stories. They're busy. They're testing me. They secretly love me but can't say it. Jung warned that projection masquerades as truth when in fact it is fantasy. The antidote: anchor in facts. Write only what is verifiable: dates, patterns, replies. Let silence speak for itself without your embroidery. Pitfall 2, punitive silence back. Some respond by mirroring the weapon, withdrawing, withholding, manipulating with absence. But Jung insisted that shadow cannot be defeated by becoming shadow. Retaliation ties you to the same field of unconsciousness. The cure is conscious clarity. State your stance once, then hold it. Your quiet must be clean, not cruel. Pitfall 3, endless exceptions. This is the empath's poison. They had a rough childhood, they're stressed at work, they didn't mean it. Compassion becomes a noose. Jung noted that the most dangerous lie is the one we tell ourselves to preserve attachment. The remedy: measure pattern, not plea. Exceptions excuse individuals, patterns reveal character. Together, these pitfalls form what I call the triad of self-betrayal: fantasy, retaliation, rationalization. Fall into them and silence wins. Resist them and you win yourself back. But resistance is not the end of growth. Silence, once confronted, must be transformed into a ritual of sovereignty, a daily practice of boundaries and truth, which is why the next stage is not escape, but reset. Jung said, "We do not solve our problems, we outgrow them." Escaping destructive silence is not enough. You must grow past it, build a new rhythm that prevents relapse into the old cycle. That is the purpose of the 7-day reset. A structured week to reclaim your psyche after silence has eroded it. Day 1-2. Observation without reaction. For 48 hours, you watch. No messages, no rationalizations, no inner courtroom where you defend or accuse. Jung noted that bringing unconscious patterns to light begins with stillness. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let the pattern reveal itself. Day 3. The Litmus Text. Send the one message, clear, brief, final. Then wait. Not for hope, but for truth. Their response is not about your worth. It is about their capacity. Day 4-5. Act on the pattern. The reply or lack of one sets your protocol. If regulated, mirror their steadiness. If avoidant, tighten your boundaries. If manipulative, disengage. If ambivalent, name the wobble once. Jung's principle of individuation demands action, not endless analysis. Day 6. Audit your investment. Take inventory. How much time, energy, and emotional bandwidth has this silence cost you? Write it down. Numbers clarify where fantasies cloud. Jung believed that what is measured becomes conscious. What remains unmeasured rules in the dark. Day 7. Decision. Not a feeling, a decision. Do you deepen, do you slow, or do you exit? The choice itself is healing. Jung argued that neurosis thrives on indecision, on the refusal to act. A clear path, even a painful one, restores sovereignty. By the end of this week, silence no longer controls you. You have mapped it, tested it, acted on it, and transformed it into data that informs your freedom. But the final truth must be faced. Not all silence is pathology. Some silences, rare and sacred, are born of care. And knowing the difference may be the most liberating insight of all. Not all silence is abandonment. Not all pauses are weapons. Jung cautioned us against reducing symbols to single meanings. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. Silence, too, has multiple faces. To misread them all as danger is to exile yourself from intimacy. There are silences that are not avoidance, not manipulation, but integration. When someone has opened themselves deeply, through intimacy, conflict, or confession, they may fall quiet not to withdraw, but to metabolize. This is the psyche reorganizing itself, the soul knitting new tissue. There are silences that are protective. A partner carrying stress may choose quiet rather than inflict raw anger upon you. Jung noted that true love is often restraint, the refusal to project darkness onto the beloved. Silence here is not rejection, but shield. There are silences that are pre-agreed. Conscious couples learn to sanctify space. When I'm silent, it means I'm centering, not leaving. Such contracts turn what was once threat into ritual. The absence becomes a container for trust. And there are silences that are shared. Two people resting in wordless presence, neither avoiding nor performing, simply inhabiting the same field of being. Jung described this as participation mystique, transfigured, no longer fusion by wound, but communion by wholeness. The test is simple. Does the silence leave you feeling steadier or smaller? Does it deepen connection when it ends or erode it? Care-filled silence strengthens both nervous systems. Toxic silence destabilizes one while feeding the other. To discern the difference is liberation, because then you stop fearing every pause and you begin to welcome the silences that heal. But to integrate this discernment fully, we must zoom out. What does your mastery of silence mean, not just for you, but for the collective? That is where Jung always returned, from the individual psyche to the fate of culture. We began with a paradox. Silence is not emptiness. It is data. Now you can see the whole arc. Silence is the shadow's first language. It divides into types: regulated, avoidant, manipulative, ambivalent. Each follows a mechanism. Each demands a response. And in every silence you encounter, your own shadow is exposed. Jung warned that what you fail to face in yourself, you will meet in others again and again until you learn. Silence is one of those mirrors. Misread it, and you become its prisoner. Decode it, and you become its master. The triad of truth stands clear. See the type. Is it care or control? Run the protocol. One boundary, one decision, one clean exit if needed. Protect the nervous system. Regulation before interpretation. Because the danger is not that you will hear nothing in silence. The danger is that you will hear too much of yourself and call it them. So here is your charge. This week, test your reality. Notice the silences around you. Send the litmus text where you need clarity. Observe whether the quiet steadies you, drains you, or entangles you. And then act, not with rage, not with retreat into fantasy, but with clarity. Carl Jung once said, "The world hangs on a thin thread, and that thread is the psyche of man." Your psyche is that thread. Every time you choose clarity over projection, sovereignty over self-abandonment, you strengthen it, not only for yourself, but for the collective. The danger isn't that you sense too much in silence. The danger is failing to build a conscious relationship with that ability. Use it as cultural medicine, as leverage against unconsciousness. Now, take this map, claim your type, and share what you've discovered. Which silence do you see most often? Which silence has ensnared you? And which silence have you finally learned to trust? Leave it below so that others walking through the same shadow can find their way into the light.